Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Focus on Liberia on this special midweek edition of Focus on Liberia. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the printing of Liberian dollars 27.5 billion. Is that a good idea? Bad idea? Was terrible decision. With me, I have Mr. Samuel P. Jackson, a political economist and author of Rich Land, Poor Country, to discuss the proposed printing of 27.5 billion Liberian dollars. Mr. Jackson, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much, Dennis. It's a pleasure as usual.
Thank you. Some call it breaking news. It's being reported in the paper that the governor of the Central Bank of Liberia, Mr. Aloysius Talu, is requesting the printing of Liberian dollar 27.5 billion additional banknotes as a short-term plan to address Liberia's cash trap problem. But guess what? He needs 21.7 million US dollars to do that printing. Mr. Jackson, we're going to be discussing that. I know you were here before and we spoke about this. Now it seems that the central bank governor is not listening to you. They are moving ahead with the printing of the banknotes. You heard the story today. What was your initial reaction?
Well, first of all, I think in fact, I know that the central bank governor is grossly incompetent. He did not make a case that would validate the printing of $27 billion of banknote. Then, of course, the second and probably the most important issue was that the representatives, they were totally unprepared to ask the right questions. And as you know, Dennis, they don't have a research bureau. They don't have anything kind of a think tank associated with them. And it was not a public hearing. You didn't have the public to come, professionals to come and give their opinion. So it was a mess, and it really demonstrates the lack of expertise that we have in the country, and the mismatch that we have, which is continuing to carry Liberia in the wrong direction. So I mean, I was very, very, very sad. That my country, we got about at least 10 Liberians globally, senior vice presidents of major financial institutions, including Fortune 500 companies here in the United States. There's a young man I know who's the vice president at the Bank of America. So on Facebook, his name is Samuel Moyela. He has 11 patents to his name. He's the vice president for payments at Bank of America. He's on Facebook. His father was my schoolmate at St. Patrick's. There's another young gentleman who happens to be my cousin, senior vice president at JP Morgan Chase, Mr. Christopher Neal Jr. He graduated from University of Chicago. He's worked for JP Morgan and a senior level executive. Then we have Mr. Lawrence Kennedy. Mr. Lawrence Kennedy is a professor in the Pennsylvania, Delaware area. He was vice president at JP Morgan Chase. Then, of course, you have Mark Mueller, who's a senior executive, senior analyst with Credit Suisse in Switzerland. And of course, many others, including Mr. Arthur Zuckerman, who works for the Federal Reserve Bank in Minnesota, and so on and so forth. So Liberia does have the expertise, and I can name you like about 3 more people within the country. I can name you your own Grable man, Samuel Wonwi Thompson. He was senior vice president at Citibank in La Côte d'Ivoire. He's bilingual. He was the guy who wrote this seminal document on the on-mill drawdown for the government of Liberia. He's there. And of course, you have another Grable man that you know about, he was a central bank governor, David Vinton. Sure, you heard about David Vinton. He's there. And of course, uh, we
Mr.
talking about
What's your point of calling
no,
these
no,
people?
no, but I'm telling you about the competence that we have. Like I said,
Okay.
I was going to name you about 10 competent Liberians within the country and out of the country that could, when you have a problem with the financial system in any country, especially when banks, are insolvent or illiquid, you don't use the same management team you have for the last 3 years that brought you to where you are. You typically go and bring in outside consultants to look at everything with a fresh eye. And they
Mm.
typically put together a team or to restructure, to coordinate and to provide some sort of solution that will improve the health of the financial system in the country.
I
And
got
it,
you.
it, it is clear to me that Mr. Aloysius Talu, a KYC, anti-money laundering compliance officer from a bank, does not have the bandwidth, the gravitas, and the experience to overcome that. I also saw his deputy. She was talking about, you can come down to the bank and go down to the basement and and see the people counting money or burning out the tier notes. I mean, that was her only contribution to the entire conversation. I was not surprised, but I mean,
Yeah.
for
Well,
my
well,
country, Liberia,
Mr. Jackson,
yeah.
I know you're calling these names, right?
Mhm.
But the problem has not been the shortage of professionals. What many are saying that you have all these professionals, but because of the kind of system we have and the leadership in place, most of the time good people go in this system and they just get stuck in it.
Yeah, okay. But you see, one of the problems with Liberia is a small mindedness that has kept the country back for 173 years. Before you could talk about the lack of human capital in Liberia, but over the last 30 years, because of the war, Liberians have spread their tentacles globally, and Liberians have acquired multidisciplinary skills in all facets of human understanding. And it is time for Liberians now, in this democratic dispensation we've had since 2006 with the advent of democratic leadership in Liberia, to put together a team to rebuild Liberia. Liberia has not recovered from the war in terms of economic recovery. It has not. We lost 90% of GDP. Okay, they mean output 90%. You can go read Steve Radley's paper, Economic Revitalization of Liberia. We lost 90% of output, GDP, the greatest loss of GDP of any country since World War II. We had almost $10 billion of support from the OECD countries to support Liberia's development between 2006 and 2017. We have not regained what we lost from the 60s. And Liberia is just sliding, it's going down the abyss. We are, we were called a post-conflict fragile nation. And if you look at the fragility index over the last 3 years, Liberia has has lost a lot of momentum. Look at the World Bank Doing Business survey of 2019 and 2020. Liberia is one of the most intractable places to do business. That's the World Bank. That's the World Bank. And if you look at the export.gov is very clear that because of corruption, because of cronyism, because of incompetence, Liberia is not a good destination for U.S. investment. The sum total of Liberia, trade between the United States and Liberia, is only about $140 million, about $80 to $90 million worth in rubber, and the rest is in used cars and Ducafe. This is a country that we've been associated with for going to almost 200 years. In 2022 will be 200 years of involvement with the United States since the American Colonization Society sent the first bunch of 86 or 88 settlers to Liberia. And we have not been able to move from that. We are still a primitive third world disadvantaged country. And because we don't want to do what are required to do the heavy lifting to move this country forward.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the request from the Central Bank of Liberia for the printing of additional Liberian $27.5 billion new banknotes. And Mr. Jackson, for those joining, I want to set the stage. The story broke today, and I read that on Front Page Africa that the central bank governor is requesting this amount. So let's set the stage. We were here before that we have a problem in the country, and a way to solve this problem is the printing of this new banknote. Just for the sake of those who didn't watch the first segment, tell us the issue that is on the ground that is central bank is trying to solve by the additional printing of 27.5 billion.
Thank you very much. Banks are the lifeblood of any economy. They intermediate, they provide funding for the purchases of goods and services, and also provide loans for expansion and economic development, private sector. Okay. And banks are a depository for safety for people's money, and then it must provide what we call liquidity. People must have access to that money. And thirdly, in savings accounts, people must also be able to make money upon that money. Yeah. You have 9 banks, and you have 92 branches. You have 8 of them foreign-owned, and only one Liberian bank, only one bank in Liberia with a degree of Liberian equity. So let's look at the financial architecture of the country. The country has a dual currency regime. It has the US dollars and it has the Liberian dollars, both as legal tender. Liberia is highly dollarized. What does that mean? It means that a significant portion of our aggregate money, the money in circulation and the money within the banks, about 75 to 80% of that money consists of US dollars. Now, if you look at the monetary aggregate what's in the bank, okay, let's look at some key definitions here. M1 is money in banks, right? And money in bank consists of demand deposit, which is your checking account, okay, and of course, quasi money, which is your savings account, okay. Then plus you have the other money, currency in circulation. So that makes the monetary aggregate. The monetary aggregate, the quantum, the value, the magnitude is based upon the level of economic activity occurring within the country. And in economic theory, we have something called the quantity theory of money, QTM. What does that mean? It means that there is a very close relationship between the money supply and the level of economic activity in the country. So if you were to look at a graph, you will see that the money supply increases as economic activities increase. So banks intermediate the GDP, the purchases of goods and services, right? So in Liberia, banks only intermediate about 5 to 10% of total GDP, of your $3 billion GDP. Because the banks...
Mr. Jackson, you're about to lose me. So let me slow you down.
Okay, but let me just, okay. Banks, okay.
Banks, the people in the country that Mr. Talu is trying to solve.
Yeah, but I'm setting the stage because there are other people that are listening to us who want to have a good understanding and some people who want to learn. So, currency in circulation, the money in the bank, which is the checking account and the savings account, plus the currency in circulation, that is your monetary aggregate. Of that total monetary aggregate, only 5% is within banks. So it means 95% of money, currency in circulation, is outside of the banking system. Why do we have that? peculiar situation in the country. You have that peculiar situation in the country because of the high degree of informality. 80.9% of your workforce, adults between the ages of 16 and 65, are selling wheeler market, they're selling pig feed in the market, they're doing subsistence farming, and only 7% of the adult population have bank accounts. Okay. Then the other thing is the functionality of the banks. The banks don't utilize in a significant way electronic banking like debit card, Visa, MasterCard, or mobile money. So Liberia is a cash and carry economy. So since most of your transactions occur within the informal sector and among people who don't have bank accounts, there's a huge demand for cash. So that cash is sucked out of the banking system. Okay, as a matter of fact, right? The other reason why you have a liquidity problem in the bank is because the banks are technically insolvent. Let me explain what solvency is. Solvency is solvency means the banks have enough money to meet the depositors' needs and also to provide credits for economic expansion. When you put your money in the bank, any amount of money you put in the bank, 17% of that money goes to the central bank as a reserve, right? Goes in reserve. The central bank keeps that prudential guideline to safeguard customers' money and also to act as a clearing. Okay, when you write a check, it goes to the central bank, and the central bank debits or credits based upon whether you are the person who wrote that check or you are the person who that check was written to. So the central bank is for clearing, and the central bank is a reserve bank. Okay.
Right.
Now here are some other issues. The other issue is that the government of Liberia over the years have been borrowing from the Central Bank of Liberia and may owe the central bank significant amount of money. No one has been able to tell me the quantum of that money, but it's around $200 million. The central bank, therefore, has been using its reserves because the central bank has expenses and the central bank is not earning enough money, and the central bank has a lot of operational inefficiencies, so it bleeding the reserves, so that the 17% of the commercial bank's money that is going into the central bank, when the commercial banks need that money, the central bank does not have it. Then the other thing is the government of Liberia went and has borrowed $65 million from the commercial banks. The government of Liberia does not have the capacity now to pay the commercial banks. The other issue is that there's a high percentage of what we call non-performing loans. Means that somebody goes to the bank and they take a loan. The bank grants that loan, and then they are unable because of economic conditions or whatever problems to pay that loan. So that loan, the interest and the cap in the principal on that money is not being paid. Therefore, it bleeds the capital of the bank. So there are two things happening, okay? Operational illiquidity and capital inadequacy, because the banks who have lent this money out are not receiving the payments to flow through for them to repay their customers. So that's why you have the liquidity problem. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Mr. Today, the central bank governor was before the legislators, and this is what he said, the reason behind the shortage. He said the money shortage, or what you've just explained, the liquidity problem, has been exacerbated by COVID-19. Mm-hmm. The high demand of money during the festive season, July 26th and the Christmas, plenty of people wanted money. Mm-hmm. So that's what and then another reason he gave said the limited ATM machines in the country. There are 157. and then the senatorial elections. But he said, chief among those, the circulation of the huge quantity of money outside the bank sector. As of December, he said, 25.3 billion was in circulation. And out of that amount, 22.5 billion was outside the banking sector, meaning representing 89.4% in circulation. You just gave the reason, and I want you to comment briefly on the other reasons. You didn't mention them. You talk about COVID-19, ATM.
Okay, but you see, the thing is, we had Ebola. Ebola was much more catastrophic than COVID-19. If you look at Liberia now, they're playing a national county meet and nobody wearing masks. So the health consequences and the economic consequences of COVID-19 is anywhere near Ebola. So to give that flimsy excuse of COVID-19 is very disingenuous. Okay. This is not the first Christmas that we had in the post-war era. We had 18 Christmases and festive seasons since the post-war era. The problem is, over the last 3 years, the gross incompetence and then the mismanagement of the fiscal affairs of the country and the monetary sector. If you look at from 2016 to now, they've printed $20 billion. Between 2016 and 2018, they infused $16 billion into the banking system. But if you look at the Presidential Investigation Tax Force report and the Crow report, in fact, the Crow report is very clear that the central bank could not give them any documentation that will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that any of the $16 billion was infused into the banking system. Then, of course, you have the issue with the $25 million mop-up. The $25 million mop-up, the ostensible reason for that was supposed to what? Drive down the
excess liquidity
and the inflation that was in there. So they only put about $20 billion into the market, and they got about 2-point-something billion. And not even 3 months later, they put that money back. And then the Crow report said $5 billion of the $20 million was not spent in the mop-up exercise, and there is no evidence of how that money was used for any legitimate mopping up or liquidity reason. Okay, so that's the problem now. The central bank governor is talking about a new family of banknotes, right? So when you talk about the new family of banknotes, I want you to listen to the new family of banknotes. If there's a new family of banknotes, was he clear whether there was going to be an equal exchange with the printing of this? Because if there's just going to be exchange in bank, that doesn't make any sense, because most of the currency is not within the banking system. So you're not adding anything there because you're replacing. If you
we're talking about the issue. So one of the reasons he said this is happening is the lack of confidence in it. Because what I'm trying to build up here is we look at the reason that he's given, and then we look at the solutions to the problem. So one of the things
but here is the key issue. The key issue is, I told you about the capital inadequacy of the banks due to the 3 reasons I told you. The central bank is capital impaired. The commercial banks are capital impaired because of the fact that the government of Liberia owes them $65 million and the non-performing loans.
Right.
And the issue of the legacy debts owed to the central bank. Then when people start to go to the banks and they're not getting their money, there's no liquidity. So that whole thing about having access to your money, you don't have it. So people are not going to put the money in the bank. So there's a lack of confidence in the banking system. So there's no confidence in the banking system, right? Printing $27 billion is not going to give confidence to the banking system. What you're doing, you're trying to solve the symptoms of the problem. The fundamental problem of the financial system, it has to be reordered. The financial system has to be reordered. They have more, you have to infuse capital. You have to infuse brand new capital. You cannot use fiat currency to solve that problem by printing your money. the old money that was just printed, about $4 billion, and I did a calculation in terms of the seniorish income, the cost of printing the money and the value of that money. The government of Liberia should have made about 15 million, between 12 to 15 million dollars net on that. No one is talking about how much money was made from that. On the other $16 billion, I did an analysis of that, and I found out $130 million in income was made from printing $16 billion. I looked at the financial statements of the central bank from 2016 to 2018, and there's no proof that senior income was recorded. When I contacted the central bank and asked them, they told me that the IMF said they should not do that. When I contacted the IMF did not respond. But I called the IMF representative one time, and he was trying to tell me that this was part of capital account. And senior-rich income is not part of capital account, but it's rather operational account. And for those of us who understand banking, understand that. So what the central bank governor wants to do is to print more money and infuse this into the economy. But there is no clarity. He said a new family of bank notes. What does that mean? A new family of bank notes, that means they're changing the currency. And if they're changing the currency, they're doing a one-to-one change. That was the same reason that was $16 billion were printed to replace, remember they said, to replace the legacy notes? And we found out that only $4 billion was replaced, and there was no proof of how that money was replaced. You have to burn it, you have to dispatch it, you have to have a technical process, and also an integrity process where people see how that money is burned. So these are people who have printed $20 billion. The central bank have printed $20 billion in 4.5 years. And we have not yet solved the liquidity problem in the bank, because the liquidity problem in the bank is much more fundamental.
Yeah.
And to fix it, you need to fix the lack of capital within the banking system. That's what the problem is. The lack of capital within the banks. And then they think about the confidence within the banking system. And then, most importantly, the issue of productivity. Liberia lacks economic productivity to earn income to put money in the bank. Income has been declining for the last 3 years of this administration. So people are not earning an income. You can't put money in the bank when you're not earning an income. So you have to give people income. When you give people income, you can only do that by the expansion of economic activity to create an enabling environment for private sector development.
Let's take it slowly, Mr. Jackson. Don't dump too much on us. So now the governor of the central bank saying printing the 27 billion will solve the problem. You are saying no. Why?
Because we already printed $20 billion over the last 5 years, and it did not make a dent in the problem. When they started to print that money in 2016, you only have 4% of currency in circulation within the banks. Today, he says you have only 11% of currency in circulation within the bank if you have 89% outside, right? Those are his own figures, right? So if you printed $20 billion and you did not solve the structural problem, you did not solve the structural problem because you're only dealing with the symptoms. You're only trying to solve the liquidity problem. When you solve the liquidity problem, as you have seen, the first time they printed $16 billion, it created an inflationary spiral, and it caused a huge depreciation of the Liberian dollar and a reduction in purchasing power, and induced a lot of poverty within the country. So they have to do something more basic, and they have to do something that is more foundational than to just try to infuse liquidity within the banking system. The banks are capital impaired. When banks are capital impaired, when the central bank examines any bank and the bank has capital inadequacy, the central bank is obligated to require for the bank to go to their board of directors to infuse new money into the banking system. That's what happens in any financial system when there is illiquidity and when there's insolvency with the banking system. But the government may not have that leverage because itself owes the commercial banks $65 million. The last time the commercial banks went to the Africa Export Import Bank to discount the $65 million by 20% to infuse liquidity, the IMF said they shouldn't do that. Okay? And then every time you ask, hold on a second, every time you ask the central bank governor a question, he says our international partners are coming to help us to solve it. And that's why I came up, when I laid the foundation early, that there are 10 Liberian senior vice presidents in major banks around the world. You don't need USAID or you don't need Kroll. Is only a risk management company. Doesn't have the bandwidth to do the monetary economics and the quantitative theory of money analysis to determine monetary outcomes. They don't have that capacity. The US AID does not do that for any country. Okay? They don't have that capacity. You need monetary experts to come in and make a determination how healthy is the financial system and bring out recommendations and policy prescriptions to solve the problem. The government does not want to solve the problem. They want to sweep it under the rug. Sweeping it under the rug means printing more money. But you had two opportunities where you printed $20 billion. Okay.
And so, Mr. Jackson, if they were listening to you, they wouldn't have done so, right? They wouldn't have printed money.
They don't have to listen to me. But let's get this clear, Dennis. I'm not here to blow my horn to say that I'm an expert. You have to look at the international best practices and what are the best ways banks operate and the international global standards. Banks have an obligation to follow something that is put out there by the Bank for International Settlement called the Basel Convention Rules, Basel 1, 2, and 3. We are in Basel 3 now. That tells the banks the level of capital adequacy and the level of liquidity that they must have to operate within the global financial system. And Liberia is a signatory to that. So Liberian banks have to follow that. So the Central Bank of Liberia has to make sure that the capital adequacy requirements of the Bank for International Settlement must be met. Or they close the banks down and they ask them to do what? Consolidate. If you look at in the United States, we don't have a whole lot of banks. We have just a few major, huge banks like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Chase. Because when banks consolidate, it makes them stronger. It makes their balance sheet stronger. It gives them more liquidity, and it gives them more opportunity to lend more money to spur economic development. Yeah. Do you have 9 banks with a $10 million capital requirement with a single obligor limit? Let me explain single obligor limit. The single obligor limit is. I need to explain these things to people. The banks can. Or any bank in Liberia, the maximum amount of money they can lend to any business is $1 million. What kind of factory can you put up for $1 million? You can't do that. So it's all restraining economic growth, the way the financial system is structured.
Yeah, we had Mr. Simeon Freeman, who's a businessman in Liberia, and he expressed that same concern that if they wanted to borrow money, they don't have that. So they don't have that money. The bank cannot give up that loan. But my thing is, if the government moves ahead to print 27 billion, what's going to happen?
Oh, there will be a calamity like we had in 2017 and 2018, 2016, where the excess liquidity will be in the banking, in the monetary system. You have inflation, and there'll be a reduction in purchasing power, and will reduce more poverty. There's a gentleman, Tokwa, saying that the central bank is saying that the non-performing loan is only 7%. That's not true. At the end of 2019, the latest report that is available on the central bank is that non-performing loans between 17 to 21%. And how can a bank examiner tell me that non-performing loans have no impact on liquidity within the banking system. Eh? If I had $100, if I lend you $80, and you're not able to pay me back that $80, would not impact my liquidity position? Would not impact my liquidity position?
Plenty of money, so it's not going to impact you.
Oh, come on. Well, but the banks apparently in Liberia don't have plenty of money, so it will impact them.
So now the bank we move ahead, we print 27 billion. The problem is not solved. You say it's going to increase poverty. There will be inflation. Probably the US rate is going to go up, and it's still not going to solve the problem. So now in the short term, because what Governor Talu is trying to do is to stop the bleeding. In the short term, for instance, the present issue the government is facing, there's no money in the bank. They can probably not even able to meet payroll. So what can be done in the short term to stop the bleeding?
Thank you very much. That's the best question you asked so far. Yes. When you dealing with financial institutions, short-term measures, stopgap measures can be much more harmful. So if you want to use the $27 billion, are you listening?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If you want to use the $27 billion to solve your short-term problem of illiquidity in the banking system, you have a serious problem because it will cause inflation, it will cause reduction in purchasing power. And then if you do not put in the measures to bring capital adequacy to the banks, to instill confidence within the banks, to structure a electronic payment system, a digital payment system, if you do not improve what we call financial inclusion, only 7% of adults have bank accounts. So you have to do, that has to be a comprehensive solution. Not stop.
Yeah. But as we're saying, like, brother, dry dog is sweet. What can we do now? Because the situation, as you explained earlier, is dire.
Okay, great. If you want to sit down and you say we have a restructure committee, you have to restructure the entire financial system. So it means do something about the $65 million that the government of Liberia owes the commercial banks. Find an institution that would discount that money and pay the commercial banks that money so they have instant liquidity. That's one thing you do right away. That will infuse $65 million of liquidity into the financial system. You understand that, okay?
No, I don't. But because you say find someone who's going to pay the commercial banks their money.
Yeah, what I'm saying, okay, you will package that $65 million, which is the one that the government of Liberia owes the commercial banks. You package that. They did that before. They went to the Africa Export-Import Bank, and the Africa Export-Import Bank was willing to do that. The IMF said, for reasons best known to themselves, that this was not a good idea. Now I understand they're reconsidering. So hurry up and get a financial institution to buy the debt from the commercial banks, so to give them the liquidity. That's number one. Number two, the government of Liberia needs to find a way of doing something about recapitalizing the central bank. Number three, you have to find a way to inject new capital into the banks that are insolvent. So you have to go to their management and to their boards of directors and say that the banks did not operate with a lot of prudence in Liberia. They lend money to the government of Liberia. They know the government of Liberia doesn't have, it's a poor credit risk. They lend money to them. They lend money to construction companies that have papers from the government of Liberia. Construction companies can't pay them. Then they've been buying T-bills from the central bank, and the government cannot repay the T-bills. So your management, because they wanted to gain political favor with the people in the government in this country, because there's an incestuous relationship between the banks and the government, this is the problem they have. So we are demanding that you find new capital to infuse in these banks, or we're going to do what? We're going to close you down and find somebody to come and acquire your assets.
Mr. Jackson.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, but to me, they still appear to long-term solution. Here
it's
is
not long. No, but the 65 million is the immediate thing. The 65 million. The 65 million is immediate.
Right now,
million is immediate.
But you may not get that, right? Because
no, but you already went to the Africa Export Import Bank, and they already gave you a term sheet that they were going to do it already.
Right.
And then the IMF is the one that said don't do it for reasons better to themselves.
What I'm saying is that is not within your own power. But what I believe the major issue here is it is not the lack of money in the country, it's the lack of money in the commercial banks, right? So we have 89, almost 90% of the money outside the commercial bank because of the lack of confidence. So so the first thing we can do is to restore confidence. And
but
how can we do that?
That's not because confidence building is not instantaneous. You can't wave a magic wand and tell people to bring their money back into the banks. That will not happen.
I have some ideas.
No. If you went and had an extramarital relationship with your wife, you cannot go ahead and build trust in 1 or 2 days. You have to have a long period of constructive engagement to make it happen.
That's a bad example, Mr. Jackson, because
you're dealing with behavior, but it is the same thing. The trust between the trust between depositors and banks is a bond, it's a secret trust, right? And if the banks broke that secret trust by not giving people the money, so they have done worse than cheating on the people, right? So if you put money in your bank and you have a medical emergency and you go to your bank, you want to go to India for surgery and you can't get that money out and you may die, right? So then along that too, you have 3 parallel financial structures that have been created. The Lebanese, the Indians, and the Fullahs, they bypass the entire banking system.
Right.
Now, the one other thing that could be done, which is very radical in nature, remember I was explaining to you the last time about the C and the R, the G, and the X minus the M?
Yeah.
Liberia exports about $600 to $700 million worth of exports, right? Okay, iron ore, 250 million, $175 million worth of gold and diamond, 140 million in rubber, and then other exports. Liberia is the only country in the global south that allows exporters to export goods, the minerals, and others out of the country, and don't ask them for export proceeds surrender. Ghana, if you export coffee, cocoa, gold out of Ghana, the Central Bank of Ghana requires for you to bring the proceeds, 100% of that, and deposit it within the Ghanaian banks, or you sell the proceeds to commercial banks in Ghana. If Liberia were to do that radical step, it would solve the problem radically, because you got $600 million a year that is going out, that is not coming back into the country. So that is another practical way. The only amount of money that you're allowed to take out of Ghana is your profits. Okay, you can repatriate your profits, but you must pay taxes on that. Okay, so that is the problem we have. You have to restructure the entire financial system, and you have to recapitalize, and you have to use a lot of creativity and innovation to make it happen. And you got to swallow some bitter pills. You got to tell the banks to recapitalize, because they're the ones that made the decisions upon which they have illiquidity today.
But Mr. Jackson, the government, or in most cases, is beholden to these exporters and the bank. So you think they're going to have that wherewithal to say, well, you're going to do this, to be very strong-handed on them? You can.
But you see, Dennis, how can you run a country without the political will to institute requirements and make people to follow the rules and regulations? Look, the reason why they're not solving this problem, Dennis, let me tell you why they're not solving this problem. They're not solving this problem because the banks and the government officials and the central bank, they're all part of this incestuous relationship. The central bank, which is supposed to examine these commercial banks, they write, I want you to listen very carefully, Dennis.
Yep.
They write in the central bank annual report that the banks have adequate capital. You know what they're looking at? They're looking at their assets on the books, including the non-performing loans. But you have to diarize, you have to journalize and diarize the non-performing loans on the books to determine the probability of getting that money. It's called the aging of receivables in financial accounting.
Right.
So some of them been on the books for 5 years, 10 years, have not been paid. So in the United States, in other good system, what we do, we tell the banks to do the write-off.
Right. But those are, even though those are receivables and they are part of your asset, but it's been too long on the book, so you write them off.
So you write them off. So when you write them off now, it will impact your net worth or your capital. So that means you have to find a way to bring in new capital. The financial system in Liberia needs reordering. It needs completely retooling and reordering. And the central bank, the examiners who go to these and look at, first of all, you have to look at the underwriting criteria that these banks use to lend out the money. That is the first thing anybody does who's an auditor. If an auditor comes in a financial institution, the auditor has to look at the quality of the assets that is sitting on the books. Just because the assets are sitting on the books, it does not mean they are recoverable assets.
Right. Mr. Jackson, when I was preparing for this interview, I did a research, and here is one thing that I found out. It's and I was trying to tell you earlier that maybe this could be an idea. I want you to comment on this, that lack of confidence is a major issue, and you gave that very bad example of extramarital affairs. But here's the thing. If to create confidence, because there is a lot of pressure on both the finance ministry and the CBL, that and you have said that over and over, that the CB is due to incompetence. So one way the government can restore confidence in the banking sector is maybe by replacing the finance minister and the CBL governor. Don't you think that's going to cause instant confidence building in the financial sector for people to be more hopeful and do something and maybe bring their money back?
But tennis, I've been seeing this for so many months, that the gross incompetence that led us to where we are today cannot be the same gross incompetence that gets us out of the situation. And in any other serious country on the planet, when you have this degree of challenges within the financial system and you have lack of economic growth, you have to do something about the personnel who are managing the economy. But because of the lack of political will and because of cronyism, the government of Liberia, Mr. Weah, does not understand what needs to be done. When Mr. Twe comes out and tells him, give him a graph and say, this graph here, next year, we're going to be growing 3.4%, and just wait and wait and wait. So let's go put some street lights on Broad Street. You know, that is the sum total of the economic development planning policy, to put street light on Broad Street. But to fix the fundamental problem within the banking system, you need new people, you need new ideas, you need innovation. So yes, I agree with you. To bring instant credibility to the banking system, there has to be change of personnel. Absolutely.
Simeon Freeman, again, is a businessman in Liberia, was on the show yesterday, and he said, calling for the head of the or replacing the finance minister and the CBL governor is childish. The problem is not with them. The problem is with the leadership, that is the president of the country.
Well, Simeon Freeman wants to be, what should I say, euphemistic. He wants to be political. The president of the country is the head. The functional and the line ministers are the people who implement. So you want to say if the problem is the president, we should change the president? Is that what he's trying to say? Instead of changing Samuel Tuet? It is more politically advantageous to remove Samuel Tuet and Aloysius Talu than to go have a change of government when you're not having a change of government in 2023 when an election. So I mean, I disagree with Mr. Tuet, Mr. Simon Freeman completely. If you have incompetence, you have to replace that incompetence. So you can say the president bears ultimate responsibility, but the president has to change his team. And if the president doesn't want to change his team, the people will suffer, and there will be political consequences. If he cannot see what happened to him on December 8th in a midterm election, and he wants to drag this thing out into 2023 and to sustain the suffering in Liberia, then of course, I mean, then that's a choice he has to make.
Mr. Jackson, the problem now, or the ball is in the court of our legislators. They were talking about it, according to the report I read from the front page, when they tried to grill the CBL governor. They said, well, let's have a closed door discussion because this issue is sensitive. And that was the suggestion that came from Mr. Dixon Sibo, who's chairing the financial committee or whatever that committee is called.
Well,
what would be your message to our legislators? What do they have to do now, or what can you tell them to do? They either vote no or vote yes. What can they do?
Okay, first of all, let's not even go to the no or yes about the printing of the money. Let them first of all have a basic understanding or a basic appreciation for the challenges the country is facing, and that can only come with data. That can only come with expertise. The national legislature does not have a research bureau with the bandwidth and the capacity to do an analysis of that kind of situation, to ask the kind of questions that will lead to results. That is the first thing. They spend $46 million a year on salaries and scratch cards. They need to spend $3 to $4 million a year on experts within a research bureau in the national legislature to help them. When you go on Capitol Hill, you will see staffers behind the representatives and the senators handing them notes and briefing to ask questions when there is a committee hearing. You see that?
Yeah.
It's done. But Liberia, they just want to go out there and they get up and they yell when they're not asking the questions that will elicit the proper response to resolve the fundamental problem that we have. They don't know what's going on with the banking system. They don't know that. I wrote a 44-page paper. I think I sent that to you before. You saw my paper. Exactly on the issues that are outstanding. I wrote that 2 years ago. And exactly what I predicted would happen, that the problem of illiquidity will arise again because the banks are capital impaired, the lack of confidence, and the three parallel financial systems that have been created as a matter of necessity by the Fullahs, the Lebanese, and the Indians. And the huge degree of informality will continue to have the largest quantum of your currency outside of the banking system.
Mr. Jackson, so if things are left the way they are, say, for instance, money is printed, the team is not changed, everything is going on as usual, what's the worst that can happen?
Well, I mean, you can see an implosion of the banks. 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the banks will just close down one day with no money. And then you could have riots in the streets. And it would be a politically sensitive matter for the country. It's a security issue. It happens when it happens in Argentina, when it happens in Greece, people riot. And Liberia is not strong enough with this democracy, with this security, to withstand massive looting or massive insurrection or any kind of massive or public outpouring because of lack of liquidity with the banking system. They need to do something and do it quickly.
In 2 or 3 sentences, talk, please, if you can, speak directly to the central bank governor.
Look, It is very difficult to speak in 2 or 3 sentences with a central bank governor that is asking for the printing of $27 billion to solve a liquidity problem in a dysfunctional financial system. It's very difficult. That means he does not understand QTM, the quantitative theory of money. That if you put a lot of money, if you grow more, if the money supply grows, there will be excess liquidity, depreciation of the Liberian dollar, reduction in purchasing power, and you will have no economic growth in the country, and you will have serious problems. So those are the he needs to. He himself said that he doesn't have the expertise, and and they're depending upon you say
Yeah,
USAID, which is an international development agency, to come and help you to solve the problems of your monetary aggregate and confidence within the banking system. That doesn't tell me that people who really want to do something or understand the problem. In solving a problem, Dennis, you have to understand the problem. And in at the LSE, we have something called a mural analysis, right? Where if you go, you look at a problem, you have to look at the root cause of that problem, because what you
yeah,
may be seeing on the top may be just the symptom. So the symptom of the problem that they're seeing is illiquidity, and they want to use the printing of the money to solve it. But that does not solve the other fundamental problems that have so much outlined in the beginning of this evening with our conversation.
yeah. And most of the time, what others are saying is the central bank governor is really not. He doesn't have the space to operate.
What space do you mean in terms of the what?
Well, he's being overshadowed, or someone else is doing the work. He's listening to somebody else. He's really not working himself. He's not using his own or his mind, his will to do stuff.
Where McGill and Weir did not want to have a truly independent central bank. If they wanted to have a truly independent central bank, they would have put somebody with the training, the gravitas, and the ability to solve the problems that were outstanding at that particular time. Mr. Talo has been there for more than a year, right?
Right.
Been there for more than a year. So if you cannot solve a problem, if you put you as a chief executive officer of a corporation and they are dealing with some urgent problems, and you have a whole year and you have not been able to turn that place around, what happens to you, Mr. Ja?
You get replaced.
You get replaced. So you have no growth or anemic growth. Government can't pay civil servant salaries. There's illiquidity with the banking system, and you're keeping the same economic management team that brought you to where you are. This is something very troubling. You
Thank,
know,
thank you. Let me bring in our listeners to share their comments. And you are watching Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the proposal from the Central Bank of Liberia for the printing of 27.5 billion Liberian dollar. And one thing before I even bring in the comments is Mr. Talu said they're going to do this, and the cost is, guess what? 25.
27 million.
What's up with LeBron? This I don't 27 or 25 million. What's up with this number? Is this some magic
Well,
number?
look, let me tell you something, my brother. Any serious country, any serious country by now will have a bureau of printing and engraving. They would have put that sunken cost into the bureau of printing and engraving that will be able to print money at a much, in terms of an economy of scale, at a much lower price. Liberia needs a bureau of printing and engraving, but the problem is the trust that they will be when they jam, they will just go there and start printing money overnight with their own machine. So Liberia has so many the complexity of the problem is so much. You
We
need
can
to
even
have your
print
own.
ballot papers.
Yeah,
I said we can even print ballot paper, and you're going to print money. But
exactly.
let me bring in some of our comments. Uh, James David said, "Let the president ask Dr. Mill Jones to come back." People are saying Mill Jones will do the trick.
Well, I mean that's his opinion.
Gabriel Carter say, I agree with Samuel Jackson. Those people don't want an independent central bank. They want to control the central bank, and this is crippling our financial system. Why would anybody want to control the central bank? And I like to quote Mr. Alexander Cummings, who said the first thing we need to do is to grow the pot. If the pie is big enough, then everybody can be able to eat in there. So why would anybody, a country, and the central bank, controlling the monetary part, why would you want to control that?
Oh, because it's like anything else with this government that's in power. It is the easiest way for them to skimp money from the top. They printed $4 billion that they said they infused into the economy. And yet, when they were passing all that money around in the campaign with the T5 campaign, with T5 doling all that money, people were going to the banks and not finding money. You follow me? People
Yeah.
were when they said they had no money in the banks, but T5 had money in the bank. They had money in his hand, standing up and dividing that money. Okay, look, if George Weah wanted to have a central bank governor that had the gravitas, at this time in our history, he could have put out there a request for the top Liberian bankers around the world to send a CV. But of course, he wanted somebody that he had political control over, because one of the first speech that Aloysius Talu made was that he was there for the Grenadier people. I'm sure you heard that speech. He said he was there because of the Grenadians, and he would do anything to protect the interests of the Grenadians. This is a political governor. He's there because Grenadier supports the president of Liberia. So when you tie politics and economics together like that, okay, it is not a symbiotic relationship. It's a mismatched relationship. And the consequences of that is what you've seen happening with the illiquidity in the banking system. He has no idea. Every time you ask the man a question, he say, our partners are helping us. He cannot tell you what monetary policy they are implementing. Either it's a contractionary monetary policy or a expansionary policy. That because if you issuing T-bills at this time, T-bills is a way of mapping up excess liquidity. And who is buying T-bills with a coupon rate of 25%? And what is the reinvestment mechanism the central bank is using to pay this 25 to pay this 25% on 12 billion? Dennis, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So the person responsible is the Ministry of Financial Development Planning, because the central bank is only an agent. So all of this interest is accruing as debt to the government of Liberia. And what is that doing to debt sustainability? It is making Liberia a debt stress more riskier. That is the problem. It's a serious problem.
Musu Stewart is saying the government of Liberia must step up its ability to generate income domestically and halt getting new loans with higher interest rate. This will be a period of hardship. Juje Dekie, I'm following the discussion. They are reflective of excess liquidity, capital flight, and inflation. Printing 27 billion new cash would not solve the problems in Liberia. And I think you agree with that.
Well, I don't really agree with that. He's in the right church, but on the wrong bench.
Put him on the right bench.
Well, I mean, he's confusing a lot of terminology, He's confusing a lot of terminology. He's right that printing of this money will cause inflation, right? But the fundamental problem is not about the effect that this money will have. Is that the problem will not be solved. The fundamental problem of lack of capital in the banks. So you go print $27 billion now. The banks will be flush with that money for 6 to 9 months. But that would evaporate again the way the $20 billion that were previously printed evaporated from the banks. Because the banks don't have the capacity, they don't have the confidence, and they don't have the architecture to hold that quantum of money within the banking system. So you have to do many, many things together. You have to do more electronic. In fact, electronic payment is going up. We have to build bigger platforms. You have to have more points of sale. You have to create and build more ATM terminals. You gotta start moving toward cashless society. You gotta start teaching Liberian entrepreneurs and the people to put money in the bank. Let them get used to mobile money. Like in Kenya, 92% of the population use mobile money. When you get in a bus, you pay with mobile money. You go to the market, you pay with mobile money. You go to the supermarket, you pay with mobile money. That keeps the money in the banks.
Yeah, and Mr. Jackson, it comes back to economic activity. So if there are no economic activities, we can even pay with Bitcoin. It's not going to solve any problem, right?
But I told you the fundamental problem is lack of productivity. You need look, Liberia needs to grow more,
Right.
manufacture more, produce more, provide more goods and services to the rest of the world.
Yeah, more people working.
Yeah,
You know.
more people working. You need the household income. You need to improve, to increase household income. You improve household income by attracting foreign direct investments or domestic capital formation. That means you create an enabling environment where people can invest. Agriculture, you're not producing enough cassava. You don't have a cassava strategy. Rice, you don't have a rice production strategy. I bet you Samuel Twerk cannot tell you how much rice was produced in Liberia last year. No way. He doesn't know that. He can't tell you how much cassava was produced, how much sugar cane, how much coffee, how much cocoa. He cannot tell you the manufacturing base of the country, what they produced last year. He cannot tell you that. He cannot tell you the manufacturing capacity of Liberia. He cannot tell you how much credit went to agriculture last year in terms of in the banks. He cannot tell you that. If he's not concerned with the real problems, okay, the foundational problems and foundational challenges of the country, which is investment and expansion of. You said about what's his name? What's his name? Cummings. Cummings said to grow the pie. How do you grow the pie? You grow the pie by output. Output creates income. Income creates what? Spending. And spending produces more what? Velocity of the money to buy more goods and services.
Yeah.
So if you start doing that, and you were able to build up a electronic or digital architecture, you can rebase your economy in terms of your GDP output, because all of those untaxed activities in the country, like the pimpins, the kekes, the magawimi, and all of those, if you have a total digital revolution in the country and people are making digital payments, you can start taxing those payments.
Yeah.
Small, but it grows. It's going to grow revenue, going to grow. So GDP now is going to start capturing. You're going to start capturing real GDP.
Yeah. Let me read one comment from McLaren David. He's joining us from Monrovia. Hey, Mike, what's up? Liberians no longer trust the banking system. They keep the money at home. Mind you, don't blame us for this. You save your money in the bank. When you go for service, it's poor. Then you are not allowed to take your own money. It's the bank that decides what you withdraw. That is driving will be customers away. So that's from my Clarence. So Mr. Jackson, okay, let me ask this question. Mohammed said, please ask Mr. Jackson, how does the additional printing of money impact the economy? Looking at the current supply of money and the status of the economy. You said that before, so just wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, basically, I come back to the fundamental, the quantitative theory of money. The growth in the money supply must be close to the growth in economic output. There's a linear relationship, right? means that there was if the economy grows by 3%, money supply should grow by maybe 2.8 or 2.9% or something like that. But you can't have the money supply growing by, like in 1 year in 2017, it grew by 47%, and the economy grew by less than 2 or 3%. You can't do that. There has to be this linear relationship between economic growth and the money
Direct,
supply.
direct relationship.
Yeah. But it's almost direct. There's something in economics now we call it the Pearson coefficient. Eh? The Pearson coefficient, 0 to 1. 1 means it has a direct linear relationship. But different variants of that coefficient there, it means that maybe 0.7, or something like that,
Mr. Jackson, the problem sometimes we need to take it out of the government to listen to this. Besides us discussing this now on focus on Liberia, where else do we have this economic discussion? I gave you an example of Mr. Cummings saying growing the pie, but we don't even see this economic discussion even from the opposition political parties. We don't see these things happening even from experts in our community who are talking about this issue. Most of the time is the issues are all political or sometimes, reactionary. The government did this and they shouldn't have done it this way. Where is the economic discussion taking place?
Great. Let's be very clear. And it says Sam Jackson get big mouth. Sam Jackson think he knows everything. Every single political leader that you know, I have told them that they need to create a think tank or a research institute within their political parties. That way, you can provide guidance to the economy and for other public policy matters. You bring in experts and look, all of the political parties in Liberia, they're not institutions. Dennis, they don't have think tanks. They don't have a real management team. They don't have communication strategy. It's all about emotion. Emotion.
And reactionary ones too.
Reactionary. So if I say, look, many of them, they come to me for me to write a paper. And I say, pay me 5,000. Oh, 5,000. It's too much, So I say, if I give you my May hour, so if they went to a white man with my same CV, the man would be asking for 50,000. But because I'm from Sunnyland, and because I'm a Muffet old man, I'm always in their space. They always see me. If I was this LSE scholar who hardly comes on Facebook, hardly interact with them, when I talk to them, maybe they'll be, but they don't take me seriously because I'm easily accessible.
Yeah.
I'm easily accessible.
I have the same problem too, Mr. Jackson. We call these people, especially opposition people, on focus on Liberia to discuss some of these issues. They will not come. But these same people will go on a Muffet trashy platform where the people are ignorant. They are not making noise. And they will be there spewing a lot of nonsense. Because maybe 1,000, 10,000 people watching them talking rubbish and garbage. And that's what is driving the discussion. And that's the problem.
Okay. Look, Dennis, I have 2 undergraduate degrees in banking, AAS and BBA, right? Okay, I have a graduate degree. Then I have a diploma in international banking from the American Institute of Banking, right? I was second vice president of Chase Manhattan Bank at the age of 27 years old in America. Right now, I'm in urban economics at the London School of Economics. The acceptance rate is only 8.9% at the London School of Economics. So what must I do to prove to you all that I have this knowledge, this specialized knowledge? Yeah? If I was not political, if I just basically kept myself away from all of this and play bigoted, I've written 2 books. You know that I've written 2 books. I'm sure you read one of my books.
Yeah.
I wrote a book almost 600 pages. So what is it I must do for you to listen to what I'm saying to you on a regular basis?
And here's a question.
I don't want to be Minister of Finance.
Exactly. That's why I put it there.
But I'm 68 years old. I'm 68. I have Social Security. I have VA pension, right? I get, I mean, you know, enough money every month for me to live. Okay. I live in my own house in Atlanta and I got some rental properties. What do I want to go to Liberia and take a, a job where I have to wake up at 6 o'clock to take a bath and go in that 2 hour traffic? I would die. You know, I would die very soon. I just coming from traveling. I went to Southern Africa. You saw me there. I was there for 34 days, enjoying myself. I come home. I've been home for 2 weeks. I've not left a finger. Nothing. I don't need to. I don't. I mean, I need money. I need money for me to like do extra things, but for me to eat every day and for me to sleep and for me to keep the cable TV on, okay, and my cell phone on, that's rudimentary now.
Yeah.
There's the younger people that need jobs, you know, but in order for them to get a job, they have to build their CV. They're not building their CVs in Liberia. When the time I got to Liberia at the age of 27, 28, I was already married. I had 3 children, and I was already second vice president of a bank in America. So I built my CV. And then when I left the adult government, I came back to the States and went back to work on Wall Street and built my CV. When Taylor won the election in 1997, I went back to build my CV. I went to Southern Africa to work. When Taylor left, again, I built my CV. I set up a consulting firm. I worked with the UN high level panel. I worked with UNDP. I worked with all these people. And then I just saying, I'm not boasting. I'm only telling you for you to understand that I'm not speaking because I want something. I'm speaking because I have a passion for my country. There's a burning desire to help you young people who've never enjoyed nothing in your life. You have never slept in a 5-star hotel. You never flown business class. You never eaten caviar. You never been to some of the most exciting places on the planet. Yeah. You know, you haven't. You haven't gotten a mortgage. You're not even married. You don't even have children. You don't even have a house. You know.
Let me read this. Let me read this comment from Mr. Dempster Yala. This question: could minting change coins help to mitigate some of our self-imposed liquidity problem? In addition to equalizing the cost of goods and services in the market, coins will preserve banknote, fix the domestic from short-term defacement of tier money. Please comment.
Brilliant. What kind of country you have? Everything is rounded up to the nearest $5. No decimal in your banking system, eh? It doesn't make any sense. Look, I just came from South Africa, okay? I brought a lot of coins with me. You know what that does when you take coins out of the country? Eh? It means you're leaving the money when I took to South Africa. I'm leaving a large portion of my money in that country there. And then the other thing Mr. Yala is right about is that in terms of pricing, you get a good amount, you get a good approximation of the value of a good if there's a decimal in your monetary system. Okay? And then he's right about that too. In terms of the tier notes. Because when you have coins, you will not have that little $5 Liberian dollar because you have the coin equivalent. You're right about that. Okay?
Money. So we go back to Dow coins?
Not Dow coins, but just like 1 cent coin, 5 cent coin, 10 cent coin, 25 cent, and like that. You need decimal in your banking system. Liberia is the only country in the world where there's no decimal, where there's no coin. Show me any other country in the world. In Ghana, you have you live in Ghana before they got the kobo.
Yeah, but Ghana is Peswa. Nigeria got a kobo, but those are...
I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm sorry, the Peswa. See, I'm kind of mixing it up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Jim Davis said, with the cost of internet and cost of improving digital system, it's still difficult with countries still dependent on car battery to charge their cell phone and no network everywhere. So what's going to happen to people in the hinterland? So I think when you were talking about the digital economy or mobile money and all that, I think that's where he's coming from. But okay. Mr. Jackson, Okay,
But
go ahead.
listen to me. I think we need to answer that question, right?
Yeah, sure.
When you talk about digitizing, right? You start from a base. You're starting from a base, and they are structural problems. You have to fix electricity, you have to fix the internet, you have to do all of that, right? The the proportion of the population that will be involved in it will grow as you improve the infrastructure associated with that. But you can't say we're not going to start because we don't have electricity, we don't have internet. You start from a base and you grow.
Yeah.
Ghana did not. This Ghana where I went the last time I ate a Burger King. Burger King did not just come to Ghana in 2021 or 2020. It
Right.
took a succession of events and processes and economic stages that Ghana went through to build a middle class that can afford to buy a burger for $5. It took time for the Burger King management to make a determination to say this particular demographic is a middle income country. It has the income and there's an aggregate demand for us to locate a Burger King in Ghana.
Yeah.
So there's statistical analysis that go into locating businesses into a country. You can't locate Burger King in Monrovia because there's no income, there's no jobs, there's no income. And then on top of that, again, you don't have the infrastructure to support the swift delivery of service and also the supply chain. When you're running a restaurant, you need a lot of energy in terms of power. You need meats. Yeah,
You need suppliers.
Burger King are bringing in meats from America. That Ghanaian animal husbandry providing that meat. The flour that it comes from Ghanaian factory. Okay, all of those things are grown. Okay, and processed in Ghana. So when you get that burger, when you get that a Burger King in Ghana that tastes just like in Atlanta, it's because a lot of planning and a lot of thought went into that. It didn't happen overnight.
Okay, let's read two more comments, and then we'll be closing in the next 4 minutes. Juju, the key is, Mr. Jackson, I'm sorry that Liberia would not use your expertise to help solve their problems or our problems. They are afraid of competent people. For Mr. Jackson's age now, Liberia could use his skills as advisor. Stop squandering your wit, Mr. Jackson.
Okay. Let me just tell you something. I'm working with the mayor of Freetown right now. Freetown is a member of the C40 Global Alliance, right? The London School of Economics put me on a team to support Freetown in their climate change adaptation. Climate change adaptation, okay? So I'm supporting Freetown in that. I went to Cape Town, okay, in early December and worked on housing adequacy in Cape Town in the informal settlement of Donoon. I'm working on other stuff in different parts of the world. That's what I always do. I don't earn my income from Liberia. From 2003 until I got sick like 4 or 5 years ago, I never worked for the government of Liberia. I worked Indonesia, I work Brazil, I work in East Timor, I work in South Sudan, I work in South Africa. So I'm always out. And so how am I living now? I haven't worked since Tastella left in 2003. That's 18 years. What have I done in 18 years? You think I just sat down and folded my arms and can't talk on Facebook waiting for Liberia to be fake so I can go there?
So that we say it is time, or is it time for Liberia to use a single currency? I think they are.
What the other man talking about as King Burger? And Burger King is in Ghana. What are you talking about? You said that King Burger.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson, one of the comments that I bring you, don't go read comments on Facebook and react.
I know, right?
I'm giving you this comment.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, yeah. No, but you put something that make me. Okay, go ahead.
Don't go there. It's part of my job. I know this stuff. Is it time for a single currency in Liberia?
Of course. The dual currency is a double-edged sword. It was good for confidence building. in the immediate post-war period, right? So we should have built capacity and built a financial architecture to go to a single currency. Tennis job. It does not make any sense for us to have a dual currency. When you send money from America, you receive US dollars in Liberia. No country in West Africa does that. It does not make any sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Wilma Cooney said, great job, FOL. Please ask the question to explain the simple term, in simple terms, the benefits to the Liberian economy and ordinary Liberian, the use of the dual currency system when every other country around us and in the sub-region is using their own single currency system. So same question.
And I just answer it. It doesn't make it's illogical to have a dual currency in Liberia. It doesn't make any sense.
Casali Double, Mr. Jackson, what benefits will the printing of additional banknotes bring to Liberia to help solve the economic situation currently?
It wouldn't. It would, in fact, it would exacerbate your economic problems and your financial challenges that you have. Absolutely.
And I'm putting this there just to tell you how many times people are interested in the dual currency, the impact of dual currency on our economy.
The dual currency was good when you came from war, when you were trying to build confidence in your financial system. But now you've had 18 years of post-war reconstruction. You have to go to a single currency because it will build up more reserves for you and it will keep more money within your domestic economy for you to grow.
Richard Jackson said, looking good, Daddy. I don't know if that's you or me.
Well, Richard, maybe we see. I don't know, Richard. Maybe that one of my
all right.
How you call it? One of my nieces.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Jackson. Thank you so much. We could have gone more, but it's time to draw down the curtains.
Thank you very much, man.
Let's wrap this up, and I want you to wrap it up this way. And here's the story. The governor of the central bank is asking for the printing of $27 billion to solve the liquidity issue. You are saying this is not a way. Tell us what's wrong with it, what the impact is going to be, and what is the solution.
The first question you have to ask the central bank governor, why did the printing of $20 billion over the last 4.5 to 5 years did not solve the problem? And how much of a solution was provided by the printing of the latest 4 billion? What are you going to do now that you didn't do before to keep a higher proportion of Liberian dollars in circulation within the banking system? What are you also going to do about the lack of confidence within the banking system that make people to keep money outside? And what are you going to do about the parallel financial systems with the Fulahs, the Lebanese, and the Indians? How are you going to incentivize them to use the banking system in Liberia? And number 5, what about productivity? What are you going to do for Liberians to earn income, to create jobs, earn income, to spend money, to spur advancement within the Liberian economy? Those are the fundamental questions that we should be asking him.
All right. And so the solution?
Well, the solution is productivity. I always start from that basic productivity. Liberia needs to grow something. Liberia needs to plant something. Liberia needs to manufacture something, needs to produce something, services to sell to the rest of the world so we can get money coming in. But we are import-dependent economy spending $1.2 billion a year with $600 million worth of exports. And we've been there since the post-war period. And we haven't changed. Our current account deficit is still almost the same. Our trade deficit is the same. Poverty is at the same. The amount of employment is still at the same. The level of informality is still at the same. Our socioeconomic indicators, the Human Development Index, has flattened out. No major improvement. And we continue to see us a very poor and dejected people. That is in 18 years post-war. What do you think is the single most important advancement You were a victim of the war. What do you think has happened in 18 years since the war ended that you can say Liberia should be proud of? What? Tell me, in terms of economic advancement.
Yeah, I can put my finger in it, but
Yeah, it's sad, right? But
where is
we
that?
dis- we discuss the problems ad nauseum. We discuss it for 18 years, for 173 years. For people to do just the right thing, Dennis, it's an impossibility in the country. They won't even come to your show for you to ask them some pointed questions. They're afraid. Then look, Dennis, they're so afraid of me. They say, "Mami, don't call me here. I mean, he know everything,
Yeah.
because it's yes, because I have the confidence and I exude the confidence because I've been doing it for 40 or more years. I'm not just joining, just come to it. And I have a passion. I love it. You see me with any notes here?
Yeah.
You see me with any notes? All the thing I'm telling you is something that I've experienced before. I love economic. I love Liberia. I love my people. If I were just to shut up, and don't say anything, eh? We could all be in Monrovia there stealing money and balling and enjoying. I could be economic advisor to George Weah. I could be like Shaw. I could be like another man named Charles Brighton. We could all be there just enjoying. But that's not my style. I have to live for a higher purpose than feeding myself with food, with sex, with alcohol, or anything else. I have to live for a higher purpose to improve the lives of other people, not about me. 68 years, how much more time do you think I got on this earth, Dennis? How much more time? Not
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson. We
You're
really, really
welcome, man.
appreciate your time, all the time coming and sharing your knowledge. And just to let our listeners know, there's a brand new show that is coming to focus on Liberia that's called the Liberian Dream. The presenter is Leo Johnson. He's going to be the host, and it's every other Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss the first one. It's this Sunday, and the topic, the current state of Liberian citizenship. What we're going to be focusing on our cultural understanding, community-driven solution, and cultural responsive system. This guy is smart. You don't want to miss it. We want to thank
Thank you
all our
very much.
viewers. Yeah, thank you so much. We want to thank all our viewers for watching, and even those who will watch later. Keep it here at Focus on Liberia. This is the only network where we discuss diversity of issues and we bring all the experts to share their knowledge with you. So sift through the entertainment and all the fluff and keep your dial set right here on Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Until then, on behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, my name is Dennis Jar, and we're going to end with our closing song that says, "We are all Liberian. Whether you think printing new currency is going to help or not, whether you think not printing currency is the solution, is going to, or you think mopping up the excess liquidity through 25 or 27 billion is going to help, we are all Liberians and we should do whatever it takes to make our country that glorious land of liberty." Good night and God bless you. Bye bye for now.
We are Liberians.